Good morning. Hello again and welcome back. Glad to have you here with us. Just a reminder before we begin that we will be having a brief communion service after the message. And so if you'd like to partake in that, if you can put us on hold for a minute if that's necessary, and go get a piece of bread, something to drink, so that you can partake when we come to that part of this message. So, hello again. My name is Sherry Marks. I'm the pastor of the Church of the Open Door in Ukiah, California, and this is my message for this Sunday. The reading comes from Luke's Gospel, chapter 9. Jesus climbed the mountain to pray, taking Peter, John, and James along. While he was in prayer, his face and his clothes shone blinding white like the sun at noon. At once, two men were there talking with him. They turned out to be Moses and Elijah, and what a glorious appearance they made. They were speaking of Jesus' coming departure, which he was close to accomplishing in Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Peter and those with him were slumped over in sleep. When they came to, rubbing their eyes, they saw Jesus in his glory, and the two men standing with him. When Moses and Elijah had left, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, this is a great moment. Let's build 3 memorials, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He blurted all this out without thinking. While he was babbling on like this, a light, radiant cloud enveloped them. As they found themselves buried in the cloud, they became deeply aware of God. Then there was a voice out of the cloud, "This is my Son, the chosen. Listen to him." Today is the last Sunday in Epiphany season for this year. This coming Wednesday is Ash Wednesday and the beginning of Lent and our journey to Easter. During Epiphany, we've been discussing various manifestations, God showing God's self to the world in the form of Jesus. Today's is the ultimate manifestation. The story today is the one that we call the Transfiguration. But before we get into it, we need to go all the way back to the book of Exodus to set some context for the Transfiguration. Context which we here today in the 21st century might not really get, but which those present that day with Jesus would have understood completely. It's another somewhat lengthy reading, but bear with me. It comes from the 34th chapter of Exodus, and it takes place after an incident of major importance. Moses had originally gone up Sinai to speak with God, and God had given him the tablets that we call the 10 Commandments. When Moses returned, he found the people worshiping the golden calf they had made up for themselves as their God. This made Moses so angry that he threw the tablets down and shattered them. After a couple of days, Moses went back up Sinai to ask God not to destroy the people for what they had done, and God agreed to a second set of tablets. This is what happened when Moses returned to the people the second time, from Exodus 34. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai carrying the 2 tablets of the testimony, he didn't know that the skin of his face glowed because he had been speaking with God. Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, saw his radiant face, and held back, afraid to get too close to him. Moses called out to them. Aaron and the leaders of the community came back and Moses talked with them. Later, all the Israelites came up to him and he passed on the commands, everything that God had told him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking with them, he put a veil over his face, but when he went into the presence of God to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. When he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, they could see Moses' face, its skin glowing, and then he would again put the veil on his face until he went back in to speak with God. It's interesting that as this story continues through Exodus and on into Leviticus, there's never any mention of any further rebellion against God and Moses. Through chapter after boring chapter, and believe me, Leviticus is boring, of endless rules, the people jump right into it and never appear to consider creating their own God again. Peter, James, and John would have entirely understood the reference being made when Jesus' face shone before them. They would have recognized that what had just happened was not some random event, but the sign that one had stood in the very presence of God, as Moses had done long ago. We, for convenience sake, divide Scripture into the Old Testament and the New, but it is truly all one story. An old story, begun in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, and told down through the centuries and on into the New Testament, where its promises come to pass in Jesus. Peter, John, and James saw what had always been there, to be seen by those with eyes to see. But we humans tend to see what we expect to see, and nothing more. It takes something truly out of the ordinary to jolt us past our expectations so that we actually see deep reality. Because they'd been so recently stunned by what they had seen, the chances are good that the three disciples would even have heard the voice of God when it spoke to them, before common sense had its chance to rear its head and convince them they couldn't possibly have seen what they thought they saw, or heard what they thought they heard. The truth is that the three disciples that day saw the real Jesus, the shiny Son of God, the chosen one, but they also saw the Jesus they knew, the one they had traveled the territory with, had shared meals with, had so often witnessed healing the sick and the broken. Because they are one and the same Jesus. But this time, for a stunned few moments, they could actually see the glorious one and understand who this Jesus was. The glory of God is all around us all the time, but it is hard to see because our minds are so trained to refuse what isn't normal, what isn't natural or reasonable. But once in a while, something will be so real that it breaks through our mind's defenses, and we know that we have seen what we have seen. We know that we have somehow seen the holy. I know, for instance, personally, for myself, that this earth is holy. I know because I experience seeing its holiness shining through, and because the earth has told me so itself in so many words. And no one, not even my own modernist mind, will ever convince me that I did not have that particular experience. Like the Israelites with Moses and the three disciples with Jesus, when we have had an experience like this, we know. Our experiences may be entirely different from one another, but we share the knowing because we have been moved beyond doubt. I expect we've all had such moments. What is your experience of having been shown God's self in a manner that has never left you doubting again? For myself, I may doubt many things, and I do, but about this central fact that God's holiness is always present all around me, there is no doubt. None. As we end this season of Epiphany, of manifesting, may we each promise ourselves to be more attentive, to look about us and see what is real right in front of us, and listen for the voice of God speaking to us. And as we prepare to enter the season of Lent, let us think about these words spoken by Jesus not that long after his mountaintop experience, to prepare his followers for what was coming. Pay close attention to what I am telling you. The Son of Man will be handed over to his enemies. But the disciples did not know what he meant. The meaning was hidden from them. They could not understand it, and they were afraid to ask. May we never be afraid to ask. I've been asked before how I can say that we are all taking part in this communion together when we may be doing it at different times, different days even. We believe very strongly in a God who is not bound by human laws, by human ideas of time and space and their limits. Our God has no limits. And what is now for me here this moment, and what is now for you wherever you are and whenever you are, when we are come together in answer to God's call, it is God's now, and it is simply now. And so Jesus has called us to gather at this table, and we have agreed to say yes. Those of us today, in this year, in this season, and those of us for 2,000 years before us. We've come together in dining rooms, in churches, in cathedrals, on hillsides, in auditoriums. Any place that we gather in answer to God's call. We are together, and it is now. And so if you have not yet gotten a piece of bread and something to drink or a cracker or something, again, you can put us on hold a second and go get something and then come back and join us. It doesn't have to be anything perfect. So, welcome back. And here we are. Just as Jesus gathered his followers with him that last night in Jerusalem, so Jesus calls us and gathers his followers together wherever we are on this planet, whenever we are on this planet. And we hear again the words that Jesus spoke in the midst of that meal. When he took bread and offered it up to the one he called Father, and when he blessed it and then broke it and said, "This bread is my body. Just as my body will be broken for you, is as this bread is being broken here right now. Broken and given for you as a sign of God's love and fidelity." And we take the cup again and we raise it up just as Jesus did so long ago. And just as so many have done and are doing right now in various places. And we offer it to God and we bless it. And we say the words again, take and drink from this cup. This is the cup of the new and the everlasting covenant. The cup that seals in my blood the promise between God and God's people. Given for you, shared for you. And so we come together wherever we are, and we eat the bread, which is his body, and we drink from the cup, which is his blood. And we are bound together not only with each other, but with God forever. Thank you for coming and joining us today. Thank you for gathering here at this table and being part of this meal. Whatever you have gained from today, be it from the bread and the cup, from the words that have been shared, carry them with you out into the week ahead of you. Carry them with you out into the world and share them. In sharing the love of God with those you meet. Go in peace, and may the week be blessed.
Founded on love, welcome and hope, with a church of the open door. You are welcome here. We invite you in to share the bread, to share